Welcome to the end of the world, where the silence is heavy and the cold is absolute. Tonight we travel south, beyond the edge of the map, to the Great White Continent. Antarctica is not merely land. It is a tomb of ice, hiding secrets that have been frozen since before humanity walked the earth. Forget the surface, forget the wind, and descend with me into the dark, beneath the white. We stand on the ice sheet, looking out at a flat, featureless horizon. But beneath your feet, under 600 meters of crushing solid ice, lies a secret. These are the Ghost Mountains, known to science as the Gamburtsev Mountains. They are a jagged range, the size of the European Alps, stretching for hundreds of miles. Imagine the peaks, the valleys, the sheer cliffs, standing in total darkness, encased in eternal frost. No human eye has ever seen them. They are preserved, like a ship in a bottle, locked away from the sun and the wind, forever waiting in the frozen dark. We perceive the ice as a coating, a layer of snow on rock. But the scale is monstrous. The Antarctic ice sheet is so unimaginably heavy that it has broken the world. The weight of the glaciers has crushed the continent, pressing the bedrock down by nearly a kilometer. The land itself has been pushed into the Earth's mantle. If the ice were to vanish, the continent would not look the same. It would remain a depressed, broken bowl, struggling to rise from the geological weight that has pinned it down for 30 million years. We are standing on a suffocated continent. Descend deeper now, 2.5 miles down. Here, beneath the pressure and the cold, lies liquid water. This is Lake Vostok. It is a massive freshwater lake, the size of Lake Ontario, sealed in a coffin of ice. It has been cut off from the atmosphere and the sunlight for 15 million years. The water here has not touched the world since the time of the ancients. It is an alien planet, right here on Earth. In this lightless abyss, evolution has taken a different path. Strange bacteria and unknown life forms may drift in the dark, surviving in a time capsule that we are terrified to open. But there are places deeper still. Hidden beneath the Denman Glacier lies the Canyon of Silence. It is a trench carved into the earth, plunging 3,500 meters below sea level. It is the deepest point on continental land anywhere on the planet, deeper than the Dead Sea. A grand canyon filled not with air, but with ancient, grinding ice. Imagine standing at the bottom of that abyss. The weight of the world pressing down on you. Miles of blue ice above, shielding you from the sky. It is a place of perfect, crushing isolation. And yet, the ice sometimes bleeds. In the McMurdo dry valleys, at the tongue of the Taylor Glacier, a shocking sight appears. Against the pristine white, a crimson fluid oozes from the fissures. This is blood falls. It looks like a wound in the flank of the mountain. It is salt water, trapped beneath the glacier for 2 million years, rich in iron and devoid of oxygen. When it finally breaches the surface and touches the air, it instantly rusts, turning blood red as it flows down the ice. A violent stain on the purity of the pole, reminding us that the glacier is alive. We assume the frozen world is a silent one. We imagine the ice sits motionless in the cold. But if you stand upon the massive expanse of the Ross Ice Shelf, and if you listen with instruments sharper than ears, you will hear the song. The ice is singing. It is a constant, mournful drone. The wind's blowing across the dunes of snow, cause the shelf to vibrate. Like the string of a colossal cello, playing a single, endless note. It is a sound of incredible loneliness. A low-frequency hum, vibrating through the crust, broadcasting a signal that no one is around to hear. The continent is not dead. It is murmuring in its sleep. Move away from the shelf, and you find a contradiction. In a land defined by water and ice, there are places where moisture is forbidden. These are the dry valleys, a landscape of brown rock and gray dust. It is the closest thing to the surface of Mars on our planet. Here, rain has not fallen for 2 million years. The wind screams down from the mountains at such speed that it evaporates all snow before it can touch the ground. It is a skeleton of a landscape. Mummified seals, thousands of years old, lie on the gravel, perfectly preserved by the cold and the dryness, waiting for a rot that will never come. But if you drill beneath this barren dust and beneath the seabed, you uncover a ghost of a greener world. The sediment cores tell a story that seems impossible. Deep in the mud, we have found fossilized roots, pollen, spores. 90 million years ago, this frozen hell was a lush, swampy rainforest, similar to the jungles of New Zealand. Dinosaurs walked under a green canopy. Ancient rivers flowed warm and dark. The ice is a tombstone resting over the grave of a tropical paradise. The memory of warmth is buried under miles of frost. Now look to the coast, to the edge of the abyss. There hangs a monster, known as the Thwaites Glacier. Scientists call it the Doomsday Glacier. It is a river of ice, the size of Florida, and it is dying. It holds enough water to raise global sea levels by 2 feet. But more importantly, it acts as a cork holding back the rest of the West Antarctic ice sheet. It is currently clinging to the seabed by its fingernails. Warm water is eating it from below. When it breaks, and it will break, the oceans will rise to swallow the coastlines of the human world. The clock is ticking in the cracking ice. Finally, look out at the sea ice. A solid sheet of white stretching to the horizon. But sometimes, the ocean opens an eye. These are the polynyas. Massive, unexplained holes of open water appearing in the dead of winter. Like a chimney in the roof of the world. They are vents. Heat from the deep ocean rises up, melting a hole in the barrier. Steam rises into the freezing air. It is a breathing hole for the abyss. A reminder that beneath the freeze, the ocean is churning, warm, powerful, and refusing to be contained. We look at the surface and see a frozen desert. Static. Unmoving. But this is a deception. Deep beneath the crushing weight of the ice sheet, there is a circulatory system, flowing in the dark. These are the subglacial rivers. A vast, hidden network of water, moving silently under miles of ice. Driven by the immense pressure of the glaciers above, water is squeezed out and forced to flow uphill. It rushes through tunnels, carved into the bedrock, connecting dark lakes in a subterranean web. It is a plumbing system for a dead continent, carrying the meltwater of ancient storms out to a sea it has never seen. And within that ice, we are hunting for ghosts. Scientists are currently drilling deep into the plateau, searching for the oldest ice. They are seeking a core 1.5 million years old. This is not just frozen water. It is a library. Trapped inside the ice are tiny bubbles of air. The atmosphere of a world that existed before humanity was born. We are digging up the breath of the planet. If you were to crack open one of these ancient bubbles and inhale, you would be breathing air from a time when mammoths walked the earth and the oceans were different. We are stealing time from the deep freeze. But some places here are not just preserved. They are haunted. Sail north to the edge of the peninsula, and you will find a ring of rock, broken by the sea. This is Deception Island. It is the caldera of an active volcano that collapsed and flooded with the ocean. The water inside the harbor is heated by geothermal vents. Steam rises from the beaches in the freezing wind. It is a place of fire and ice, a ghostly sanctuary where the whalers used to hide. The black sand smokes. The water boils in the shallows. It is a cauldron, bubbling at the bottom of the world, waiting to erupt again. The ice preserves, but it also imprisons. And not everything trapped there is dead. Buried in the permafrost and the glacial layers are the preserved viruses. Pathogens, bacteria, and giant viruses that have been dormant for 30,000 years. They are sleeping in suspended animation, waiting for the thaw. As the climate warms and the ice retreats, these ancient biological agents are waking up. We are unlocking a Pandora's box of evolutionary history, releasing microscopic entities that modern life has never encountered. The ice is not just water. It is a cage, and the door is slowly opening. Finally, look out at the icebergs drifting in the Southern Ocean. Most are blindingly white, but occasionally you will see a phantom. These are the emerald icebergs. They glow with a deep, alien green light. They are not made of snow. They are formed from marine ice that has scraped the bedrock of the continent. They are filled with iron-rich rock dust, ground-up remnants of the mountains trapped in the crystal lattice. They look like jewels floating in the gray water, but they are actually bleeding the continent into the sea, carrying the iron that feeds the ocean in a beautiful, dying light. We rely on the rhythm of day and night to anchor our sanity. But here, time is broken. For months on end, the sun refuses to set. It circles the horizon like a watching eye that never blinks. This is the midnight sun, a season of insomnia where the light is a relentless weight. Shadows stretch across the ice, rotating like the hands of a clock, but the darkness never comes to bring relief. The land is bathed in an eternal, glaring twilight. It is a psychological siege of endless, cold light. But when the light fails, it fails completely. The pendulum swings into the polar night. For months, the sun does not rise. The continent plunges into a darkness deeper than any midnight you have ever known. It is a shadow that lasts for seasons. In this abyss, the temperature plummets down to minus 90 degrees Celsius. The atmosphere freezes. The wind sharpens. It is the true face of the bottom of the world. A kingdom of ice ruling in the absolute, uncontested black. In this extreme cold, the air itself begins to crystallize. It is not snow in the traditional sense. Instead, the moisture in the air freezes instantly, creating a phenomenon known as diamond dust. Tiny, glittering needles of ice hang suspended in the stillness. They drift like a fog made of glass. When the light hits them, the air sparkles with millions of microscopic prisms, creating halos and phantom suns. It is a deadly beauty. To breathe this air is to inhale the frozen shards of the atmosphere itself. Visuals here are treacherous. There comes a moment when the world dissolves. This is the whiteout. It is not merely fog. The light reflects between the snow and the clouds, erasing all shadows. The horizon vanishes. The sky and the ground merge into a seamless, white void. There is no up. There is no down. Depth perception fails. You are floating in a blank page. A terrifying emptiness where the mind cannot find a single point of reference. It is a blindness caused by too much light. And above this white void, the shield of the earth is broken. Directly over the pole lies the ozone hole, a massive tear in the atmospheric layer that protects us. Because of human industry, the chemicals gathered here and ate away the sky. Now, cosmic radiation pours down unimpeded. Ultraviolet light strikes the ice with an intensity found nowhere else. We are standing under an open window to the hostility of space. The air is thin, the cold is absolute, and the light is burning. The memory of the Earth is longer than the memory of ice. High in the transantarctic mountains, locked within the sandstone cliffs, lies a paradox. These are the fossilized dunes. Ancient, petrified waves of sand. They are the remnants of a vast, scorching desert that covered this continent millions of years ago. Before the cold descended, before the first snowflake fell, winds blew hot sand across a dry, arid landscape. The mountains have preserved the shape of the wind from a forgotten era, proving that this white hell was once a place of heat and dust. The ice is merely a temporary mask worn by a desert waiting to return. And across that ancient land walked the lost travelers. We think of Antarctica as an island isolated by the ocean. But it was once a bridge, connecting the Andes to the bushlands. Buried in the sediment are the bones of the lost marsupials, small, furry ghosts that migrated across the Antarctic forests. They used this continent as a green highway moving from South America to Australia. When the ice came, the bridge was burned. The connection was severed, and the travelers were frozen in their tracks. Their lineage broken, leaving their descendants separated by an ocean of impossible cold. We are looking at the severed limb of the global family tree. Now, life has nowhere to go. The surface is lethal. The wind scours the rock, leaving nothing but bare stone. So life retreated. It went inside. Crack open a rock in the McMurdo dry valleys, and you will find a green line just beneath the surface. These are cryptoendoliths. Hidden inside the rock, microscopic organisms entombing themselves in the quartz, hiding from the wind, hiding from the cold, surviving on the faint sunlight that filters through the stone grains. It is the last, desperate refuge of life on a dying world, living inside the tomb to escape the air. To guard these secrets, the continent built a fortification. Approach the coast, and you are met not with a shore, but with a cliff. This is the ice wall. The edges of the massive ice shelves rise vertically hundreds of feet out of the black ocean. It is a monolithic barrier stretching for thousands of miles. A sheer, white facade that denies entry. It looks artificial, like the ramparts of a fortress built by giants to keep the small things out. It is the physical border between the chaotic ocean and the silent, frozen interior. A line drawn in ice that commands you to turn back. But the ice is also a destroyer. As the glaciers slide towards the sea, they do not move gently. They are heavy, grinding sledges. They crush the bedrock beneath them, pulverizing granite into a fine, silty powder. This is glacial flour. When the meltwater flows into the sea, it carries this dust with it, turning the ocean a milky, turquoise blue. It looks beautiful, but it is the dust of crushed mountains. The continent is slowly grinding itself away, bleeding its own skeleton into the water to feed the dark ocean waiting below. There is a wind that does not blow so much as it falls. We are accustomed to air moving across the land. But here, the atmosphere is heavy. The air on the high plateau freezes and becomes dense. It grows too heavy for the sky to hold. So it pours down the slopes of the continent like an invisible, rushing river. These are the katabatic winds. Gravity-driven storms, accelerating to 200 miles per hour. It is an avalanche of air, sweeping the edges of the continent clean, scouring the ice with the force of a sandblaster. If you stand in its path, you are not facing a breeze. You are standing beneath a falling ocean of cold that wants to push you off the edge of the world. But the ice is not just a surface for the wind to strike. It is a lens. Buried deep beneath the South Pole is a machine looking for ghosts. The ice here is so pure and so crushed by pressure that it is perfectly clear. Scientists have lowered strings of sensors a mile down into the dark. They are waiting for a flash of blue light. They are hunting neutrinos, ghost particles blasted from exploding stars and black holes. They pass through the Earth as if it were smoke. Trillions pass through your body every second, but the ice catches them. We are using the frozen crust of our planet as a telescope, looking downwards to see the burning hearts of distant galaxies. And what lies beneath that lens? A scar. Buried beneath the ice of Wilkes Land is a gravity anomaly, a massive, circular bruise on the crust of the Earth. It is believed to be an impact crater, 300 miles wide. Hidden by the glaciers lies the evidence of an ancient apocalypse. This may be the grave of the asteroid that caused the Great Dying, the extinction event 250 million years ago that killed 90% of all life on Earth. The killer is still here, sleeping under the blanket of the eternal winter it helped to create. The silence of this grave is occasionally broken by a sound that should not exist. A roar. On the Nansen ice shelf, something terrifying is happening. A river of liquid blue water is flowing across the white desert. It culminates in a waterfall, a massive cataract plunging 400 feet directly into the sea. It is the sound of the continent bleeding. In a place where water should be rock hard, it is flowing. It is the roar of the thaw, a violent reminder that the temperature is rising and the solid world is beginning to liquefy and wash away into the dark ocean. Yet, the continent fights back. There is a paradox at the end of the world. As the land ice melts and flows into the sea, something strange occurs. The fresh water sits on top of the dense salt water. And because fresh water freezes at a higher temperature, the sea ice expands. In a warming world, the ring of ice around Antarctica can actually grow larger. It is a defensive reaction, a shifting, breathing barrier. The continent is trying to build a new shield out of its own melting blood, a desperate geometry of freeze and thaw in a dying system. Navigate now into the gyre. There is a stretch of ocean nestled against the continent, known as the Weddell Sea. Its waters are legendary. They boast a clarity unrivaled on Earth. Distilled by the cold, filtered by the freeze, until the water is clearer than the distilled fluid in a laboratory. But this beauty is a lure. It is the clearest water and the deadliest trap. This is where the Endurance died. Shackleton's wooden ship was not merely sunk. It was crushed. The ice here is restless. It swirls and compresses, squeezing the hull until the oak beams screamed and splintered, leaving the men stranded on the drifting floes. It is a sea that actively hunts anything that dares to float upon it. But the ice does not just crush ships. It crushes the world. We spoke of the weight pressing the continent down. But consider the reaction. This is isostatic rebound. The Earth is elastic. It has a memory. If the ice melts, if the white burden is lifted, the continent will not stay down. It will rise. Like a crushed spring, slowly uncoiling. The bedrock will surge upwards from the mantle, reclaiming its height. shrugging off the ocean and changing the shape of the globe itself. It is a slow-motion resurrection, a continent waiting to stand up once the weight is finally gone. Deep in the interior, far from the rising coast, lies the pit. This is the Bentley Subglacial Trench. It is a geographical anomaly, the lowest point on the surface of the Earth that is not covered by the ocean. It plunges 2,500 meters below sea level. But it is not empty. It is filled with ice. A massive, frozen plug, filling a hole the size of a country. If you could stand there, at the bottom, you would be miles beneath the surface, buried in a canyon of crushing, blue silence. In this land of solids, there is a liquid that refuses to freeze. Hidden in the dry valleys is a shallow, ankle-deep pool, known as Don Juan Pond. It is the darkest liquid in the White Desert. The air temperature drops to -50 degrees, yet the water stays liquid. It is 40% salt, a brine so thick, so chemically dense, that the laws of freezing do not apply. It sits there, a dark, unblinking eye, watching the glaciers pass, refusing to turn to ice. An alien chemistry, defying the cold, simply by being too corrupted to freeze. Finally, consider what lies in the molecular lattice. Beneath the ice sheets and the permafrost lies a sleeping giant. Vast reserves of frozen methane. It is ancient organic matter trapped in the freeze, waiting. Methane is a greenhouse gas, far more potent than carbon dioxide. As the ice retreats, as the permafrost thaws, the gas begins to leak. It is a feedback loop. The warming releases the gas, and the gas accelerates the warming. We are standing on top of a bomb, and the fuse is made of melting ice. We perceive the Southern Ocean as a chaotic storm of waves and wind. But there is a structure hidden in the violence. Off the coast of the Ross Sea lies a massive, rotating trap. This is the Rossgyre. It is a whirlpool of slow-moving water, the size of a country. Driven by the wind and the rotation of the Earth, it spins endlessly in the freezing dark. It is a prison for icebergs and nutrients. Objects that drift into its grasp can be trapped there for years, circling the drain of the Antarctic coast. A liquid vortex, hoarding the debris of the continent in a cold, silent carousel. But the ice holds more than just debris. It holds the breath of the past. Scientists are not just drilling for water. They are drilling for time. The ice cores pulled from the depths act as transparent time machines. Look closely at the ice. You will see tiny, trapped bubbles. This is not modern air. It is the atmosphere of the Pliocene. It is the air that dinosaurs breathed. It is the sky from an era before humanity existed, captured and frozen in suspension. We are cracking open the lungs of the planet to measure the ghosts of the climate that used to be. As we go deeper, the color of the world changes. On the surface, the snow is blindingly white, reflecting the sun. But deep within the glacier, the pressure is unimaginable. The weight of the miles of ice above squeezes the air bubbles out. It compresses the crystal lattice until it becomes a dense, solid block. This old ice does not reflect white light. It absorbs the red end of the spectrum and glows with an intense, electric blue. It is the color of oxygen-starved water. A deep, alien sapphire radiating from the bottom of the frozen sea. It is the color of extreme age and crushing pressure. We fear the cold above, but we should fear the heat below. The West Antarctic ice sheet is not sitting on dead rock. It is sitting on a stove. Recent surveys have discovered 91 volcanoes, buried beneath the ice. It is the largest volcanic region on Earth, and they are not all extinct. If these sleeping giants wake, they will not spew ash into the sky. They will erupt into the base of the glacier, melting the ice from below, creating vast lakes of lubricated water. The ice sheet could slide off the land and into the sea, destroyed not by the sun, but by the fire in the Earth's belly. And yet, despite the fire below, the surface remains the kingdom of the end. We speak of cold as a concept, but at Vostok Station, it is a weapon. Here, the lowest temperature in the history of the planet was recorded: -89.2 degrees Celsius, -128 degrees Fahrenheit. This is not weather. This is an environment incompatible with biology. If you breathe deeply, without protection, the moisture in your lungs can freeze instantly. Your body heat is stripped away in seconds. It is the absolute limit of life on Earth. A cold so profound, it stops the machinery of existence. We stand upon the surface, blinded by the flat white. We perceive the ice sheet as a smooth blanket covering the world. But beneath us, the land is jagged. Rising from the bedrock and piercing the sky are the Ellsworth Mountains. These are the titans of the continent, the highest peaks in Antarctica. But what you see is only the summit. The true bulk of the range lies buried, suffocated by the ice sheet. Imagine the valleys and the cliffs that lie in eternal darkness, deep below the snow. We are mountaineers standing on the shoulders of a giant that has been swallowed whole. The mountains are struggling to keep their heads above the white tide. Drift out now, leaving the land behind, into the open water. The chaos of the ocean is interrupted by a strange geometry. These are the tabular icebergs. Unlike the jagged shards of the north, these beasts break off from the massive ice shelves. They are perfectly flat, floating islands with vertical cliffs, rising hundreds of feet from the waves. Some are miles long. Massive, silent aircraft carriers made of frozen freshwater. They look artificial, too perfect to be natural. They are drifting monuments to the scale of the shelf that birthed them. Moving cathedrals with flat roofs, waiting for congregations that will never arrive. Sometimes, the ice refuses to break. It pushes out from the land into the hostility of the sea and holds its ground. Behold the Drygalski ice tongue, a massive, floating peninsula of ice extending 50 kilometers into the dark water. It is not a temporary feature. It is ancient. It has remained stable for at least 4,000 years. The waves crash against it. The storms batter its sides. But it remains. A frozen limb refusing to retract. A testament to the unyielding force of the glaciers pushing from behind. It is a road leading nowhere, paved with ice and ending in the abyss. Descend now beneath the waterline into the crushing black. It snows here too. But this is not frozen water. This is marine snow. A ceaseless, soft rain of organic debris. Dead plankton, fecal matter, and the dust of decay falling from the surface. It drifts down through the water column for miles. Silent, white flakes of death. It is the food for the abyss. The bottom of the world eats the refuse of the light above. A recycling system driven by gravity and silence. It is a blizzard that has never stopped falling in the dark since the oceans began. And who eats this falling snow? On the seafloor, under the shadow of the ice shelf, grow the glass sponges. They are alien structures. Skeletons made of silica, fragile as crystal. They form vast, ghostly forests in the deep. They do not move. They barely grow. Some of these sponges have been sitting there, filtering the water, for 10,000 years. They are the oldest living animals on the planet. Silent watchers, made of glass, surviving in a world of crushing darkness. If you were to touch them, they would shatter. But in the stillness of the Antarctic deep, they are immortal. Consider the obsession of the ancient cartographers. For 2,000 years, before a single ship crossed the southern circle, this land existed only in the imagination. They called it Terra Australis Incognita, the unknown southern land. The Greeks believed it had to exist. A massive continent required to balance the weight of the north. Without it, the earth would topple over. It was a ghost haunting the maps of the world, drawn in ink long before it was found in ice. It was a placeholder for the unknown, a dark spot at the bottom of the globe representing our fear of the void. It was the hole in the map waiting to be filled with white silence. And when we finally stepped into that silence, we found something terrifying. Every other continent holds the bones of our ancestors. Europe, Asia, the Americas. They are layered with ruins and graves and the ash of campfires. But Antarctica is blank. It is the only continent with no indigenous population. No tribe ever called this place home. No language was ever born here. No war was ever fought on its glaciers by native kings. It is a land without a past, a clean slate of geological time, untouched by the stain of human history. The silence here is heavy because for millions of years, no human throat ever screamed against the wind. Because of this emptiness, the land defies ownership. It is a political anomaly, a massive, frozen laboratory. The Antarctic Treaty designates this place as a scientific preserve. It is the only place on Earth where there are no borders, no military bases, no weapons testing. It is governed by peace, not because we are noble, but because the land is too hostile to conquer. It belongs to no one, and it belongs to everyone. A temporary utopia maintained only by the cold and the mutual understanding that we are merely guests in a kingdom that wants us dead. But the air itself is a deceiver. In the crystal clarity of the polar atmosphere, the sky plays tricks. Look up, and you might see 3 suns burning in the sky. These are sundogs, or parhelia. The air is filled with millions of hexagon-shaped ice crystals. They act as prisms, bending the light and creating mock suns to the left and right of the true star. It looks like a divine sign, a trinity of light staring down at the ice. But it is merely a hallucination of physics, a beautiful lie projected onto the canvas of the freezing air. The deception goes deeper, warping the very shape of the world. The temperature inversions here, where cold air sits below warm air, create a lens. This is the Fata Morgana, a complex mirage. It takes objects on the horizon and stretches them. Distant icebergs appear to be towering walls, hundreds of feet high. Cliffs distort and float in the sky, upside down. Ships appear to fly above the water. The early explorers charted mountain ranges that did not exist, deceived by the bending light. You cannot trust your eyes at the bottom of the world. The horizon itself is fluid. Observe the surface of the frozen sea. We expect the ice to be a smooth, unbroken sheet. But the wind here is a sculptor of violence. When the storms howl across the open water during the freezing season, the ice cannot settle. It is pushed. It is piled. It forms scales. This is dragon skin ice. The slush creates plates that stack upon one another, like the armor of a mythical beast. It looks reptilian. A rough, impenetrable hide, protecting the dark ocean below. It is a reminder that the freeze is not peaceful. It is a chaotic battle between the gale and the water, resulting in a skin of frozen armor. But the true horror lies beneath that skin. Descend into the water column and watch the ceiling. A finger of ice begins to grow downwards. This is the Brinicle, the icicle of death. It is a tube of supercooled, extremely salty water sinking through the sea. It looks like a stalactite, reaching for the floor. It moves with purpose. And when it touches the seabed, the cold spreads, like a plague. A web of ice races across the sand. Sea urchins and starfish are instantly encased, frozen alive where they crawl. It is a silent, creeping assassination by the chemistry of the cold. A slow-motion weapon that leaves a trail of crystal tombs in its wake. The ice kills, but it also remembers. Deep in the interior, far from the killing brine, we extract the cores. And inside the deepest layers, we find the sleepers. These are ancient bacteria, microscopic organisms trapped in the lattice for millions of years. They are not fossils. They are merely paused. Their genetic code links them to species that vanished from the rest of the Earth eons ago. We are holding living ancestors in our hands. If the ice melts, if the dormancy ends, they will wake up. We are sharing the planet with biology that does not belong in our time. To understand the scale of this frozen vault, look to the spine of the continent. Slicing the land in half is a jagged scar. The Transantarctic Mountains, a range 3,500 kilometers long, one of the longest mountain chains on Earth. They divide the world into east and west. A massive granite wall, holding back the East Antarctic ice sheet, like a dam holding back the sea. The peaks rise through the clouds, black pyramids, piercing the white shroud. They are the vertebrae of a giant buried in the snow. And inside that granite spine lies the ultimate contradiction. Crack open the rocks of these frozen peaks, and you will find black veins. Massive seams of carbon buried in the ice. Coal is the memory of life. It is the compressed remains of ancient forests and rotting swamps. Its presence here is undeniable proof that this white wasteland was once green. Ferns grew here. Trees dropped their leaves into warm mud. We are walking on the graveyard of a tropical jungle. The black coal is the shadow of the life that was murdered by the cold. We imagine this land as purely abiotic, a place where life is merely an intruder. But the stones remember. High in the mountains, encased in hard rock, we have found the hunters. This is Cryolophosaurus, the frozen crested lizard, a 20-foot-long predator with a strange, bony crest on its head. It stalked these valleys in the Jurassic period. It did not hunt on ice. It walked through ferns. It breathed warm air. But the climate shifted. The world turned cold, and the lizard became stone. We are digging up dragons from the freezer. Proof that even the mightiest can be erased by a change in the wind. The color of the end is not always black. Sometimes it is pink. In the warmth of summer, the glaciers begin to blush. This is known as watermelon snow. It is a bloom of microscopic algae, Chlamydomonas nivalis. It produces a red pigment to protect itself from the harsh UV radiation. Looks like candy, or like blood spattered across the drifts. But this color is a weapon. The red snow absorbs more heat than the white. It melts the ice faster. The glacier is infected with a life form that burns it from the inside out. A biological feedback loop painted in the color of a warning. We think of glaciers as slow, fluid rivers of ice. But some are nervous. Some are violent. Deep in the West Antarctic lies the Willen's ice stream. It does not flow continuously. It moves in fits and starts. This is a slipstick motion. Twice a day, a massive section of ice, the size of a state, lurches forward. It creates seismic waves, earthquakes, that happen on a schedule. The entire ice stream groans and jumps, sliding towards the sea in a stuttering rhythm of collapse. It is a heartbeat of pure friction, a reminder that the ice is not just sitting there. It is clawing its way towards the ocean. We return to the darkness, beneath the crust. Another hole, drilled into the unknown. This is Subglacial Lake Mercer, buried under a kilometer of crushing ice. We expected emptiness, or perhaps simple bacteria. But the mud brought up a mystery. We found the carcasses of tiny animals, crustaceans, and tardigrades, the famous water bears. They were not alive. They were ancient corpses. How did they get there? Into a sealed tomb, miles beneath the surface? It implies that the ice retreated long ago, allowing life to bloom before the door slammed shut again. We are sifting through the debris of a forgotten summer. Finally, look to the edge of the subantarctic, to the storm-swept Campbell Island. Here stands a monument to isolation. It is known as the loneliest tree, a single, Sitka spruce. It does not belong here. It was planted by a governor in the early 20th century. The next nearest tree is over 200 kilometers away. It stands alone, twisted by the wind, a solitary sentinel guarding the gateway to the frozen south. It is an alien trapped on an island with no companions, growing slowly in the screaming wind. A living marker of just how far we have strayed. Stand at the very bottom of the world's axis. Here, the geometry of our civilization collapses into a singularity. On the maps, the lines of longitude slice the globe into 24 distinct hours. But at the South Pole, these lines converge. They meet at a single, theoretical point in the snow. If you walk in a tight circle around this point, you are walking through time. You traverse 24 time zones in a matter of seconds. Yesterday, today, and tomorrow lose their meaning. You are standing in a vortex where the definition of a day dissolves into a dizzying, meaningless spiral. The strict rules we use to organize our lives simply do not apply. Because of this convergence, time here is not real. It is imported. The continent itself has no time zone. The sun does not dictate the start of the day. It circles endlessly or hides for months. So the humans here must choose a lie. The research stations operate on the time of their supply countries. One station might wake up while their neighbor is going to sleep. Time is merely an administrative decision, a fragile construct brought in on a ship to keep the madness at bay. In the white silence, it is always the eternal now. Breathe in. The air filling your lungs is unlike anything you have tasted before. This is the 0 point. The air circling Antarctica and sampled at Cape Grim is the standard for clean air. It has traveled over thousands of miles of empty, churning ocean. It has touched no factories. It has passed over no cities. It is the baseline, the only remaining sample of what the Earth's atmosphere is supposed to be. Scientists measure it, not to enjoy it, but to calculate exactly how much we have poisoned the rest of the world. It is a sterile breath from a dying past. And falling through this pristine air comes the dust of stars. The snow here is so pure and so undisturbed that it becomes a collector. We are hunting micrometeorites, tiny specks of dust that have fallen from the cosmos. Everywhere else on Earth, they are lost, mixed with the dirt and the smog of industry. But here, melt a bucket of snow and filter the water, and you will find them. Tiny, magnetic spheres. The debris of comets. The ash of asteroids. We are walking on the pulverized remains of other solar systems, perfectly preserved in the deep freeze. Finally, look to the coast, where the white mask slips. There are rare places where the rock breaks through. These are the Antarctic oases, like the Larsman Hills. It is a landscape of raw, naked geology. There is no ice here. Only granite and gneiss scoured by the wind. It looks like the surface of the moon. A skeletal landscape revealing the bones of the continent. Feels wrong to see the brown earth in a kingdom of white. It is a scar on the face of the glacier. A reminder that beneath the suffocating ice, there is still a broken, rocky world waiting to be exposed. We build our monuments, believing they will last. But in this kingdom, permanence is a myth. The ice shelf is a conveyor belt, moving slowly, relentlessly, towards the sea. Any static building placed upon the brunt ice shelf is doomed to be buried or thrown into the ocean. So we learned to crawl. Look at the Halley 6 research station. It does not sit on the ground. It stands on hydraulic legs. It is mounted on giant skis. It looks like a chain of mechanical insects, huddled against the storm. When the abyss approaches, when the ice prepares to calve, the entire station must be towed away. It is a mobile city, fleeing the edge of the world. Acknowledging that here, we are refugees, on a shifting, dying floor. But while we flee, the earth creates. Return to the fire of Mount Erebus. The volcano is not merely a vent for magma. It is an alchemist. The lava lake deep within churns with a unique chemistry. When it erupts, it does not just spew ash. It throws jewels into the sky. The steam carries crystals of a northoclase feldspar and microscopic flakes of metallic gold. The slopes of the mountain are dusted with treasure, a glittering coating of wealth that no one can spend. It is a display of opulence in a land of desolation. The volcano is decorating its own frozen tomb with a confetti of gold and glass. Descend again, past the shoreline, into the sub-zero brine. Here, the extreme cold changes the physics of life. Oxygen dissolves better in freezing water, and the metabolism of creatures slows to a near halt. This leads to a nightmare called abyssal gigantism. Creatures that should be small refuse to stop growing. Sea spiders, normally the size of a fingernail, span the width of a human face. Isopods, resembling woodlice, scuttle across the mud, the size of footballs. It is a slow-motion world of gargoyles, where life takes its time to grow monstrous in the oxygen-rich, dark. But the dark water is not just a nursery for monsters. It is an assassin. We worry about the air warming, but the ice sheet is being attacked from below. This is the circumpolar deep water. Ancient, warm, salty water from the depths of the ocean. It is creeping up onto the continental shelf. It slides beneath the floating glaciers, like a knife. It melts the anchor points. It hollows out the ice from the bottom up. We cannot see it happening. It is a stealthy, thermal invasion. The ocean is eating the land, quietly, invisibly, dissolving the foundations of the frozen world. and into this hostile mystery, we brought war. In 1946, the silence was broken. The United States Navy launched Operation High Jump. It was not a small scientific team. It was an armada. 4,000 men, 13 ships, aircraft carriers, and destroyers, invading the ice. Ostensibly, it was a mapping mission. But the sheer scale fueled the darkest paranoia. Rumors swirled of secret bases, of hidden civilizations inside the hollow earth, of flying saucers rising from the snow. We projected our fears of the unknown onto the blank canvas of the pole. The fleet retreated early, battered by the weather, leaving behind a legacy of conspiracy that haunts the archives to this day. We speak of loneliness as a feeling, but in the subantarctic, loneliness is a coordinate. Drift north into the freezing swells of the South Atlantic. Here lies a rock that defines isolation. This is Bouvet Island, a dependency of Norway, but belonging only to the storm. It is the most remote island on the face of the earth. A single glaciated volcano rising out of the black water. The nearest human neighbor is thousands of kilometers away. It is a place almost impossible to reach, surrounded by cliffs of sheer ice and guarded by seas that want to crush you. It sits there, a silent sentinel in the middle of nowhere, watching the waves roll around the world, unbroken and unobserved. Return to the ice and observe the residents. We watch the emperor penguins shuffling across the drifts. We see their waddle and we mistake it for clumsiness. But beneath the dense feathers lies a skeletal torture. The penguin does not have short legs. It has long legs, folded up inside its body. The anatomy reveals that they are permanently squatting. Their knees are tucked, tight against their ribs. Imagine walking in a perpetual crouch for your entire life, while carrying an egg on your feet, in the freezing dark. It is not a cute walk. It is a feat of biological endurance, a permanent state of tension hidden beneath a tuxedo of feathers. In the dry valleys, the wind does not just blow, it carves. The air here is laden with grit. It acts as a sandblaster, running for millions of years. The rocks on the valley floor are not round. They are sharp, angular. These are ventifacts, sculptures created by the gale. The wind has planed them flat, creating facets and flutes in the hard granite. They look like abstract art left by an alien civilization. But the artist is simply the friction of the air itself, a violent erosion that turns stones into knives. The continent is a puzzle piece, but the pieces do not always fit. Buried in the ocean floor, near the Antarctic coast, are the breadcrumbs of a lost world. These are the microcontinental fragments of Zealandia, a massive continent that sank beneath the waves 23 million years ago. Antarctica holds the connection. The geological fingerprint that proves this sunken land was once attached to the polar south. We are floating above a drowned Atlantis, a sister continent that was swallowed by the sea, leaving only the tips of mountains, like New Zealand, to gasp for air. Finally, consider the stability of the ground beneath us. We trust the land to be solid. But the West Antarctic ice sheet is a structure built on a lie. It is a marine-based ice sheet. This means its base sits on bedrock that is below sea level. It is a bowl filled with ice, sitting in the ocean. As the water warms, it does not just melt the edges. It flows underneath. It lifts the ice off the rock. If this sheet collapses, it will not be slow. It will be a runaway failure. A structural disintegration, sliding into the sea. We are balancing a skyscraper on a foundation of melting butter. We listen to the clock, ticking in the background, but the clock of the world is made of melting ice, and it is ticking faster. Antarctica is dying by the numbers. Every single year, the continent loses 150 billion tons of ice. It is hemorrhaging mass into the rising sea. The scale of this loss is beyond human intuition. Imagine a mountain range dissolving into water every 12 months. It is a liquidation of the landscape. Gravity is pulling the glaciers into the ocean faster than the snow can replace them. The balance has tipped. We are watching the slow-motion collapse of the global thermostat. The ice is not just melting, it is fleeing. As the chemistry changes, the ghosts arrive. The Southern Ocean was once red with the swarm of krill, the lifeblood of the whales. But the waters are warming, and the krill are vanishing. In their place come the salps, transparent, gelatinous barrels pulsing through the dark. They are creatures of pure jelly. They link together in long chains, drifting like specters through the void. They consume the plankton, but offer little nutrition to the rest of the web. The ocean is turning from a rich ecosystem into a soup of slime. A clear, mindless army inheriting the ruins of the freezing sea. On the barren rocks, exposed to the screaming wind, life engages in a war of patience. Behold the lichens. They are the toughest survivors on the planet. They do not grow on the stone. They grow inside the microscopic cracks, hiding from the scouring air. Their metabolism is so slow, it is indistinguishable from death. They grow a fraction of a millimeter every century. To them, a human life is a flicker. They sit in the freezing cold, dormant and dry, waiting for a single drop of water to wake them for a moment. They are the watchers, measuring time in geological stillness. When the sun abandons the pole and the 6-month night begins, the darkness is not empty. Look up. The sky is burning. This is the Aurora Australis, the southern lights. Massive, silent curtains of green and purple fire undulating across the stars. It is a violent collision. Solar wind slamming into the magnetic shield of the Earth. But here, in the desolation, there is no audience. The lights dance over 1,000 miles of nothing, reflecting off the ice in a ghostly neon ritual. It is a display of cosmic beauty, performing endlessly for the silence. But for the intruders, for the humans who stay, the darkness demands a price. As the winter stretches on, the mind begins to fracture. This is isolation syndrome. The winter over. The brain, starved of sensory input, starved of color, and starved of change, begins to shut down. This is the Antarctic stare. Researchers drift into fugue states, staring at the wall for hours without a thought. Sentences trail off into silence. Memory evaporates. You forget where you are. You forget who you are. The white darkness outside seeps inside, until the person becomes as hollow and as frozen as the continent itself. We believe the South Pole is the end of the journey, but there is a point further into the void. It is known as the Pole of Inaccessibility, the exact geographic coordinate furthest from any ocean. It is the hardest place on Earth to reach, and standing there, in the absolute middle of the white desert, is a ghost. In 1958, the Soviets arrived. They built a small shack and placed a bust of Lenin on the chimney. The shack is gone now, buried under decades of snow. But the bust remains. A plastic face staring north towards Moscow, slowly being swallowed by the ice. It is a tombstone for a fallen empire, standing alone at the most isolated point on the planet. Beneath the freezing waves, history is also preserved. The Southern Ocean is a sepulcher. During the 19th century, the sealers and whalers came to harvest the fat of the deep. Many never left. Their ships, crushed by the pack ice or broken by the gales, sank into the black. But they did not rot. The water is too cold for the wood-boring worms to eat the hulls. So the ships sit there, perfectly preserved in the freezing brine. Masts still standing, decks silent. They are time capsules of the slaughter, waiting in the dark for crews that will never return. But not all the debris is ancient. There is a new horror drifting in the current. These are the ghost nets. Massive, synthetic fishing nets, lost or discarded by modern trawlers. They are made of plastic that will not decay for 1,000 years. They drift through the Southern Ocean like invisible walls. They continue to fish, trapping seals and penguins in a tangled web. The animals die and decay, but the net remains, resetting itself to kill again. It is an eternal, synthetic death trap, haunting the waters endlessly. We map the world, we pave the world, we tame the world. But Antarctica remains the exception. It is the last wilderness. Here, the wilderness is not a park. It is the dominant force. It is a place where humanity is merely a temporary, tolerated guest. If we turn off the heaters, if we stop the ships, our presence here ends in minutes. The ice does not care about our politics or our science. It simply waits for us to leave, or for us to freeze. It is the only place left where the earth is still stronger than the human race. And finally, we reach the end of vision. When the storm rises and the sun is hidden, the world loses its definition. This is the white darkness. It is a phenomenon where the light is so diffused that shadows vanish. The horizon is erased. The sky becomes the ground. The ground becomes the sky. You are floating in a boundless, featureless void. There is no up. There is no down. Only the white silence pressing against your eyes. It is the color of oblivion. A blank page at the end of the book where the story stops and the deep,